How's it going, everyone? Rosalind here. Today we're going to be taking a look at Mato Anomalies, a new RPG from Arrow's Games, which until recently wasn't really on my radar. However, when I was approached with the opportunity to try out the game for myself, I did a bit of research, thought it looked interesting, and decided to give it a go. Now, I should stress that this video is not a review of the game. However, I will be structuring it similarly to how I would a review. That is, in the first part of the video, I will simply go over what the game is about with a brief introduction to its story before talking about the various gameplay mechanics. And then in the second part, I will provide my opinions on what I liked and didn't like about the game. There are two primary reasons for using this format. The first being that I have not yet fully completed Mato Anomalies, and thus any opinions I have could very well change. The second, and equally important reason is that, in full disclosure, I am being paid to produce this video. In formatting the video this way, anyone who is worried that being paid may influence my opinions on the game can simply watch the first part of the video to see what the game is all about, and then disregard the second half. That being said, I intend to provide my honest opinions based on what I have played, and the contract I signed permits me to do so, as I wouldn't have signed it otherwise. Still, I believe this format is for the best for both integrity and transparency. Alright, with that out of the way, let's talk about Mato Anomalies. Mato Anomalies is a turn-based anime-inspired RPG taking place in Mato, a neo-futuristic version of a bygone Oriental city. The story follows the dual protagonists of Do, a private detective, and the exorcist Graham, as they scour the city gathering intel, finding clues to the mystery of the strange anomalies happening around the city, and discover rifts which act as portals to a different dimension filled with demonic enemies. The story and gameplay structure of Mato Anomalies is split up into several sections, with the story itself being presented through comic book style scenes, fully animated cutscenes, and the more traditional character portrait and text boxes found in many JRPGs. Of note, the comic book and animated cutscenes do have full voice acting, whereas the character portrait scenes do not. Outside of cutscenes, you will control either Do or Graham depending on the situation. When exploring the city of Mato, you will control Do. During these segments, you will be tasked with talking to various NPCs in order to gather information and progress the main story. As you progress through the game, other activities will also become available, such as the ability to visit shops to buy and sell items, rewatch animated and comic book cutscenes at the cinema, and take on side quests. Occasionally, you will also need to mind hack people in order to progress a side quest or the main story, which takes the form of a card-based battle system very similar to the game Slay the Spire. You have a preset deck of cards with a mix of offensive and defensive effects, and you need to use these in order to reduce the HP value of your target to 0 before your own HP value reaches 0. Each turn, you draw up to 4 cards and gain up to 3 energy with which to actually cast those cards. Each card has a different value, which can be seen at the top left-hand corner of the card, which represents how much energy it takes to actually cast it. The two main types of cards are Persuasion cards and Defense cards. Persuasion cards serve as your offense and will deal damage to your target, whereas defensive cards will give you defense points that reduce the amount of damage you take on an opponent's turn, the value of which can be seen at the top of the screen in the form of the opponent's intentions, basically how much damage they will do to you on the following turn. If you don't use all of your cards in a given turn, you can choose to keep any remaining cards until your next turn, but doing so will see you drawing fewer cards. Whenever you do use a card, it goes to your discard pile, and once you've used every card in your deck, your discard pile is shuffled back into your deck to be drawn again. When performing a mind hack though, you aren't simply fighting against the person you are trying to hack. In most situations, they will also have demons accompanying them in battle. Defeating these demons isn't necessary to win the battle, and even if you do defeat them, they will respawn after a set number of turns, but leaving them alone can cause you problems, as these demons will provide beneficial effects to your target, such as blocking incoming damage, making you discard some of your cards, and even healing your opponent. Assuming you do defeat your opponent, you'll hack their mind and be rewarded with whatever intel you were trying to acquire. As far as decks go, each one is pre-made and can't be edited, but new decks do become available as certain conditions are met throughout your playthrough, with each deck having different cards and a different theme to it. Once you have gained your intel, either through the course of normal dialogue or via mind hacking, you will generally be led to a rift, which serves as the entrance to a lair, layers being the dungeons of Mato Anomalies, and it is in these layers that Graham takes over. While exploring layers, you will control Graham as you run around their corridors collecting items and battling enemies. If I had to describe what these layers are like, I would say they remind me of a cross between the Matrix in Soul Hackers 2 and the prologue dungeon of Tokyo Mirage Sessions. Layers themselves come in 3 types: main story, side quest, and random layers. The main story and side quest layers are pretty self-explanatory, but random layers are a bit different. Their purpose is to provide a place to get extra experience, items, and money, but they also introduce a light roguelike flair to them. Exploring random layers will introduce a sanity meter that decreases with each battle, and as your sanity level decreases, you will incur negative effects. And you can also find shrines in these random layers that provide beneficial effects to your party. Enemies inside of layers are not random, and instead are positioned at static locations, and upon running into them, combat begins. However, unlike with Do, Graham's combat is a more traditional turn-based battle system in which each character and enemy takes turns performing actions, with the turn order being displayed in the upper left-hand corner of the screen. Actions that deal damage can hit enemy weaknesses for increased damage, or be resisted if the enemy is strong against an attack's damage type. Where Mato Anomalies' combat differentiates itself from other turn-based combat systems is with how it handles skills and how it treats your party not as individuals, but as a collective group. For example, each character in your party doesn't have their own HP bar. Rather, the HP of all characters in your party are added together to create one HP bar for the entire party, and any damage received or healing done affects that HP bar. Beneficial effects such as stat increasing buffs, or detrimental effects such as status ailments though, are applied to the individual. It should also be noted that the consolidation of HP totals into one HP bar does not apply to enemies, as each enemy still has its own HP bar as you would normally expect to see. As for skills, Mato Anomalies does away with traditional resource systems such as MP or SP in favor of a cooldown system. Basically, each skill outside of standard skills provided by a character's equipped weapon has a cooldown associated with it, and after using a skill, it will be unusable again for a set number of turns, with different skills having different cooldowns. These cooldowns also persist after battle, so if a skill is on a cooldown at the end of an encounter, it will still be on cooldown at the beginning of the next battle. But you can affect how long a skill's cooldown is through the use of Mato Anomalies' talent system. After each battle, you will gain party experience, and upon leveling up, all party members will be awarded a talent point. You can spend these talent points on a character's talent tree, which is split into Yin, Yang, and Ultimate. It is through these talents that you can increase things such as a character's attack, defense, and evasion, or increase the damage of a character's skills. Some talents also reduce the amount of turns certain skills go on cooldown for, or add additional effects such as automatically resetting a skill's cooldown should an enemy be defeated with said skill. Putting enough points into a given talent tree can also unlock entirely new skills as well. It should be noted though that only a character's personal skills can be improved through talents, with a character's equipped weapon affecting their weapon skills. Speaking of which, each character has access to 2 different weapon types to choose from, with the weapon determining the character's damage type and weapon skills. The weapon skills being the basic attacks that don't incur a cooldown when used. For example, Butterfly's primary weapon deals pierce damage, and the base weapon skill allows for it to hit 2 enemies at once for 70% damage each. Weapons can also come with affixes that can provide different beneficial effects such as increased AoE damage or increased critical hit damage. The last major system to talk about is the gear system. Gears are kind of like Mato Anomalies' version of equipment and accessories combined into one. Each gear provides stat boosts to your entire party such as attack or defense, and come with set effects, extra bonuses that the party gains should you link up multiple gears with the same effect. To equip and link gears, you slot them into the gear grid, but simply slotting them into the gear grid isn't enough to gain their bonus set effects. You have to pay attention to how the gears link. This is indicated by white lines coming out of the gear's icon in the gear menu. Place these gears on the grid in such a way that they link up, and you'll gain the corresponding set bonuses. And with that, I think I've gone over most of the important things to know about Mato Anomalies. Momentarily, I will be moving on to the second part of this video where I provide my opinions based on what I've played so far, but for those dipping out now, feel free to drop by my Twitch stream at twitch.tv/RoslinGaming if you have any questions about Mato Anomalies, and I'll be happy to answer as best I can. So if you've been following my content for a while, then you'll no doubt have already guessed what part of Mato Anomalies I found most interesting, and that is the character talent trees. I love making builds for characters in JRPGs, and a talent system is a great way to do that. Even by just glancing at Mato Anomalies' talents for the characters that I was able to acquire in my time with the game, I can already envision a few different builds. That being said, I can also see a scenario in which you can get so many talent points that you can fill out the entirety of each character's talent trees, completely invalidating builds altogether, since the actual number of talents is rather low. This is a situation that could very well stifle my own enjoyment of the game should it actually happen. I am also interested in how the turn-based combat system during Graham's sections of the game will continue to evolve. So far it has not been challenging, but utilizing the game's cooldown system combined with the talent trees and the weapon skills could provide a rewarding experience should there be enough challenging content later in the game. I also happen to like the card-based battle system for Doe's mine hacking. I'm actually a huge fan of TCGs in general, having played Magic the Gathering competitively for many years, and I also happen to love Slay the Spire. The mine hacking combat also provided more of a challenge than Graham's sections did, with one battle in particular being quite challenging. Sadly, the lack of being able to edit your deck is a negative. Hopefully, as more decks are unlocked, it will provide enough variety to make up for not being able to make your own. Another aspect of the game I've taken an interest in are the weapons and gear system. Weapons having differing effects and weapon skills which provide more customization, combined with slotting in different gears on the gear grid to either go for flat stat increases or set bonuses, are things that do get me excited to experiment with. Again, I just hope the game becomes more challenging so as to make these systems feel rewarding to fully utilize. Moving on, I do need to touch upon graphics and performance. Overall, the game performed well on the PlayStation 5, however, I did notice that after leaving the game in suspend mode and coming back to it the next day, I started to experience small hiccups when opening and closing the game's menus, navigating the menus, and when exiting battles and layers. These issues did resolve themselves after a restart though. Another issue I encountered happened during a couple of the comic book scenes. When watching them, I found that sometimes the voice acting would happen and finish well before any text boxes actually appeared on screen. Now, I played the game with Japanese voices, and I do speak Japanese, so this didn't affect my ability to understand what was happening, but it is definitely a concern nonetheless. Graphically, the game is alright. There is a distinct cyberpunkish vibe the devs are going for with the city of Mato, and I do think they hit that, but at the same time, the overall graphic quality does feel a bit lacking. And the layers, at least the ones I entered, all looked pretty much the same, which is why earlier I actually used the comparison to the Matrix in Soul Hackers 2. Now, one thing graphically I did quite like were the character portraits that are used during the event scenes in the game, even if I would have liked them to have more varied expressions. And speaking of characters, I'm not sure how I actually really feel about them. I got the impression that the writers were trying a bit too hard to be edgy and funny at the same time, as all of the characters so far have been quite aggressive towards each other to a degree that almost feels unnatural. It could just be that over time they will mellow out and start to interact with each other like actual collaborators, but if not, I can see their current interactions getting old fast. Aside from the characters, I do find the premise of the game's story interesting enough to hold my attention, and the cyberpunkish setting is one that I tend to really enjoy. That being said, I'm less enthusiastic about the overall writing, with the aforementioned character interactions playing a role in that. This could be a localization thing. I did notice that the writing quality in Japanese was of a higher quality than that of English, with the dialogue flowing more smoothly and the competitive nature of the characters being toned down. And that'll be it for this early impressions video on Mato Anomalies. I almost certainly missed something to talk about, as there was a lot to cover, so if there's any questions that you have, feel free to hit me up over on Twitch at twitch.tv/RoslinGaming, or my Discord server, both of which are linked in the video description below. And also, if you found this video helpful, please be sure to leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already, and until next time, take care.